Welcome to room 13.
I thought moving into a new apartment would give me a fresh start, a clean slate. But the first thing I saw through the windows wasn't the city I moved to. It was something else, something wrong. Another city entirely, one that shouldn't exist. And it was watching me. The apartment smelled of damp plaster and something sharper, like copper left too long in the rain. I stood in the middle of the empty living room, my boots scuffing against the warped hardwood, and felt the silence press against my eardrums. The place was a steel, third floor, corner unit, with tall windows that promised light and a view of the city I'd just moved to. I'd signed the lease without a second thought, desperate to leave behind the life I'd burned to ash back in Chicago. But as I set my duffel bag down, the air seemed to hum, a low vibration that made my teeth ache. I chalked it up to exhaustion. Moving does that to you, makes the world feel off kilter. I crossed to the windows. They were old, their frames blackened with age, the glass rippling faintly as if poured by unsteady hands. I expected to see the city I'd driven into, the jagged skyline of Portland, its bridges stitching the river together under a gray drizzle. Instead, the view stopped my breath. Beyond the glass stretched a city I didn't recognize, spires of bone-white stone twisted upward, their tips vanishing into a sky the color of bruised plums. Streets coiled like veins, pulsing with lights that flickered in no pattern I could discern. No cars, no people, just an endless sprawl of structures that seemed to breathe, their edges softening and sharpening as I stared. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and looked again. The city was still there, alien and wrong. I pressed my hand to the glass, half expecting it to give way like water. It was solid, cold. My reflection stared back, but its edges were blurry, as if it didn't quite fit my shape. I laughed, a brittle sound, and told myself it was a trick of the light, a distortion in the old glass. But the hum in the air grew louder, and my reflection's eyes seemed to linger a moment too long before following mine. I unpacked to distract myself, filling the apartment with the few possessions I'd kept. Books, clothes, a chipped mug from a life I no longer claimed. The windows loomed at the edge of my vision, their strange city whispering at my periphery. I avoided looking out, focusing instead on the mundane, the creak of the floorboards, the faint drip of a faucet somewhere in the bathroom. But the apartment felt alive, its walls exhaling a subtle warmth that made my skin prickle. I kept the lights on, though they flickered every few minutes, casting shadows that moved too slowly to be mine. That night, I lay on a mattress on the floor, the city's hum seeping into my bones. Sleep wouldn't come. The windows glowed faintly, not with Portland's sodium vapor glare, but with a sickly light that pulsed like a heartbeat. I got up, heart thudding, and approached the nearest window. The city outside had changed. The spires were taller now, their tips glowing with a faint red that reminded me of open wounds. The streets shimmered, wet with something that wasn't rain. And there, at the edge of my vision, something moved. A figure, or the suggestion of one, darting between buildings. It was too tall, too thin, its limbs bending at angles that made my stomach lurch. I yanked the curtains shut, but the fabric was thin, and the glow bled through, painting the room in shades of decay. I told myself it was a hallucination, stress from the move, the weight of starting over, but the hum was louder now, a chorus of whispers just beyond comprehension. I checked my phone, no signal. The clock read 3:17 a.m., but when I looked again it hadn't changed, though I swore minutes had passed. The next day, I avoided the windows. I busied myself with arranging furniture, plugging in a lamp that flickered no matter which outlet I used. But the apartment seemed to shift around me. The hallway to the bathroom felt longer each time I walked it, the door frame narrowing as if daring me to squeeze through. The air grew thick, heavy with that coppery scent, and the walls seemed to pulse faintly, like the skin of something sleeping. I called the landlord, but the line crackled with static, and no one answered. By evening, I couldn't ignore the windows any longer. The curtains were open, though I didn't remember touching them. The city outside was closer now, its buildings pressing against the glass like faces peering in. The spires gleamed with a wet sheen, and the streets were crowded with shapes. Figures that moved in jerky, unnatural rhythms, their heads tilted as if listening to the same hum I felt in my chest. I tried to open a window, to prove it was just glass, just a view, but the sash was sealed. The frame fused as if it had never been meant to open. I stepped back, my breath shallow. The room felt smaller, the walls closer than they'd been that morning. I grabbed my keys, my coat, and stumbled to the door. It wouldn't budge. The knob turned, but the door seemed to flex, resisting my pull. I pounded on it, shouted for help, but the sound was swallowed, as if the apartment were a void that devoured noise. Panic clawed at me, and I turned back to the windows, the only way out. The city was watching me now. The figures in the streets had stopped moving. Their faces, or lack of them, turned upward toward my apartment. Their bodies were wrong, their limbs too long, their torsos twisting in ways that suggested no bones beneath the skin. The hum was deafening, a cacophony of voices that weren't human, chanting in a language that made my head throb. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the sound was inside me, burrowing into my thoughts. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, as the city pulsed and the apartment breathed. Hours, maybe days. Time felt slippery, like oil on water. I tried to leave again, but the door was gone, replaced by a smooth expanse of wall that pulsed under my touch. The windows were all I had left. I approached one, my reflection wavering, its face no longer mine, but something sharper, yet hungrier. The city beyond was no longer just a view. It was here, inside the room. The spires loomed over me, their shadows stretching across the floor, and the air was thick with the stench of wet stone and blood. I don't remember deciding to touch the glass again, but my hand was on it, and it wasn't cold anymore. It was warm, pliant, like flesh. The city poured through, not as a view but as a presence, filling the apartment with its streets, its lights, its figures. They were in the room now, circling me, their movements silent but heavy with intent. I tried to scream, but my voice was gone, replaced by the hum that now spoke in my own voice, reciting memories I'd buried, the fire in Chicago, the faces I'd left behind, the guilt that had driven me here. The apartment was no longer an apartment. It was a fragment of that other city, its walls dissolving into streets that wound tighter around me. The figures closed in, their featureless faces splitting into smiles that weren't smiles, their hands reaching not to touch, but to pull, to unravel. I felt myself fraying, my thoughts scattering like ash. The city wasn't just outside, it was inside me, rewriting me, claiming me as its own. I don't know when I realized the truth, but it hit me like a blade. I hadn't moved into an apartment. The apartment had moved into me. The windows weren't showing another city. They were showing this one, the real one, the one I'd been brought to without knowing. Portland was the lie, a skin I'd worn to hide from what waited here. The figures weren't strangers. They were pieces of me, reflections of what I'd done, what I'd fled. The hum was my own voice, confessing, accusing, welcoming me home. I'm still here, in the city that isn't a city. The windows are gone, but I see it everywhere. Spires that pierce the sky, streets that pulse with my heartbeat, figures that wear my face but not my eyes. I try to remember Portland, the drizzle, the bridges, but it's fading, like a dream I can't hold. The city is all there is now, and it's alive, and it's me. I walk its streets, or maybe they walk me, and the hum is a lullaby, soothing me into something I don't recognize. I'm not alone anymore, but I'm not whole either. The city has claimed me, and I'm dissolving into it, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but the view. And yet, sometimes, in the quiet moments when the spires dim and the streets still, I feel a flicker of something else, a memory, a pull, a door I can't find. I reach for it, but the city tightens its grip, and the hum grows louder, drowning out the man I used to be. I'm not sure if I'm the one looking out the windows anymore, or if I'm the city looking in.